Picture this. You've just survived tax season, or maybe you finally decided to tackle that long overdue spring cleaning.
Oh yeah, that dreaded spring cleaning.
Right. And you walk into your home office or like that one dark corner of the basement, and you were just staring at it.
A literal mountain of old paperwork.
Exactly. Bank statements, expired insurance policies, mystery envelopes you never even opened. You're looking at this paper monolith wondering, well, what is actually safe to toss?
It is a totally universal feeling.
Mhm.
We all have that one filing cabinet or that one cardboard box shoved in the back of a closet that just radiates anxiety every time we walk past it.
We are unpacking a stack of resources today from Neighborhood Parcel. They're a locally owned A+ BBB rated shredding service based right in Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
And conquering that clutter isn't just about cleaning your desk.
No, definitely not. Our mission for this deep dive is to rescue you from information overload, help you close a massive security loophole in your home, and, understand the surprising science and rules behind document destruction.
Because knowledge is most valuable when it is applied. We aren't just talking about aesthetics here. We are talking about actively safeguarding your identity, protecting your business, and complying with stringent state laws.
State laws. Like what?
Well, for example, Massachusetts has a mandate known as 201 CMR 17.0.
Sounds intense.
It really is.
Right.
For anyone who isn't a compliance officer, that is essentially a strict state law requiring businesses to protect the personal information of residents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if a business improperly disposes of customer data, they aren't just facing bad PR, they are facing severe financial liability. This is about turning a mundane chore into a highly effective security measure.
Okay, let's unpack this because the sheer volume of paper we are dealing with is wild. According to the research, the average American household generates between 6,000 and 8,000 sheets of paper every single year.
That is a staggering amount of paper.
Right. And a huge chunk of that is loaded with sensitive personal information. The natural instinct for most of us when we get tired of looking at it is to just grab a handful and chuck it into the recycling bin.
Which is incredibly dangerous, like really dangerous.
Wait, hold on. I get the theory, but let's be real. If I take an old bank statement, rip it in half, and bury it under wet coffee grounds in my kitchen trash, is someone really digging through my garbage in a quiet suburban neighborhood?
What's fascinating here is that the law sees it entirely differently than you do.
Really? How so?
You might feel a sense of privacy in your driveway, but legally, there is absolutely no law against dumpster diving.
Wait, none at all.
None. Once your documents hit that curb and are in the trash, you have zero claim to privacy. The Supreme Court has actually ruled on this concept.
That is wild.
Yeah, your legal expectation of privacy completely evaporates the second that lid closes.
That completely changes the math. If it's perfectly legal for someone to take my trash, I'm basically relying on the honor system to protect my bank details.
And the statistics back up why this is such a massive vulnerability. Identity theft is currently the fastest growing crime in the country.
I believe it.
In a recent reporting year, it affected 1.1 million Americans. A shocking number of people assume these breaches are entirely digital. They picture hackers in dark rooms writing malicious code.
Right, the classic movie hacker scene.
Exactly. But the barrier to entry for digital hacking is high. The barrier to entry for paper theft is just a pair of gloves and a dark night.
That is a terrifying image.
Studies show that over 60% of paper-based data breaches happen during improper disposal. The trash can is literally the front door for these thieves.
Over 60%. So my half-ripped bank statement under the coffee grounds is actually a gold mine because it takes zero technical skill to exploit.
Precisely.
And the financial toll of this is astronomical. The sources note that over $100 billion a year is lost to information thieves.
100 billion.
100 billion. That is drained bank accounts, fraudulent loans, and credit scores that take years to repair. And this doesn't just impact individuals, it affects businesses in a huge way.
Think about a small business. They throw away internal memos, draft quotes, financial printouts, employee records.
Things you wouldn't necessarily think are top secret.
Right. Let's look at a specific real-world scenario we see in the research. Imagine a mid-sized local landscaping company. They throw out an internal spreadsheet listing their vendor pricing and their upcoming bids for commercial contracts.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, a savvy competitor or a disgruntled former employee fishes that out of the dumpster. They now know exactly how much to bid to undercut that company on every single contract.
Wow.
They can literally steal a business's entire livelihood using improperly discarded paper trails. It is an incredibly common origin story for corporate espionage.
So holding on to those expired documents turns them from records into active liabilities. Once a document ages past its usefulness, keeping it is actually riskier than throwing it away. But as we just established, the trash can isn't safe.
Definitely not safe.
So how do you decide what stays in the filing cabinet and what needs to be destroyed? Because keeping everything forever is clearly just building a bigger target on your back.
You need a system. And the cornerstone of financial organization, whether you are a household or a small business, is the 7-year rule.
The famous 7-year rule, but why 7? Why not 5 or 10?
It exists for a very specific structural reason tied directly to the IRS audit mechanisms.
Okay, the IRS. That makes sense.
Generally, the IRS has a standard 3-year window to audit your tax return. However, that window doubles to 6 years if they suspect you underreported your income by 25% or more.
So they give themselves a 6-year look-back period for substantial errors, and you want to leave a 1-year buffer just to be absolutely safe, hence 7 years.
That is the exact logic, though I should add a major caveat.
What's that?
If the IRS suspects a fraudulent return or a failure to file altogether, there is no statute of limitations.
Whoa, wow. So they can come after you forever.
Pretty much. But for the vast majority of standard, honest filings, 7 years is your magic number to prove your case.
Let's break this down specifically so you don't feel overwhelmed when you open that drawer. Let's look at what falls under the 7-year umbrella.
Good idea.
You need to keep your tax returns, your W-2s, 1099s, and your receipts. You also need to keep bank and credit card statements if you are specifically using them for tax deductions.
Right, and for businesses, that includes payroll records.
Got it. And you need to keep your investment statements for 7 years after the account officially closes.
The reason thieves target things like W-2s specifically is because it is the holy grail of identity theft.
It really has everything on it.
It does. It contains your full name, your address, your employer, your exact income level, and your social security number. It is everything a thief needs to open a fraudulent line of credit in one single piece of paper.
But what about the day-to-day mail? The routine stuff that clutters up the kitchen counter?
That falls under the 1-year rule. Standard utility bills, routine correspondence, standard bank and credit card statements that aren't tied to tax deductions. You only need to keep those for 1 year.
Why do thieves even want a utility bill, though? There's no social security number on my electric bill.
Because a utility bill is the gold standard for proof of residency.
Oh, interesting.
If a thief buys a stolen social security number on the dark web, they still need to prove they live at an address to open a bank account in your name.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, that discarded electric bill provides the exact supporting documentation they need to complete the fraud profile.
That is terrifyingly simple. Now wait, what about home improvement receipts? I always thought you tossed those once the contractor left and the paint was dry.
That is a very common mistake.
Oh.
Home improvement records fall into the indefinite category.
Indefinite, really?
Yes, you need to keep those the entire time you own the property because they directly affect your capital gains tax calculations when you sell.
Oh, I see. Because if I buy a house for $300,000 and I put a $50,000 kitchen in it, my cost basis is now $350,000.
Exactly.
When I sell the house for $500,000, I only want to pay taxes on the $150,000 of profit. But if I shredded the kitchen receipt, I can't prove that $50,000 investment to the IRS.
You've got it perfectly. The same logic applies to home loan records.
How long for those?
You keep those for the entire life of the loan, plus 7 years after you pay it off.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then there are your permanent documents.
Yeah.
Birth certificates, property deeds, wills, social security cards. Those never get destroyed.
There is also a really practical tip in the source material regarding pay stubs. You don't need to hoard your weekly pay stubs for 7 years.
No, you definitely don't.
You can shred those as soon as you receive your annual W-2 and verify that the numbers match up. So what does this all mean? The overarching theme here is that the just-in-case mentality of hoarding every piece of paper is actively working against you. Keeping unnecessary records creates a massive, unnecessary privacy risk.
So true. So we have our piles sorted. You have your stack of documents from 8, 9, 10 years ago. It is time to neutralize the threat and destroy them.
This is the moment where most people proudly drag out that $30 plastic home shredder they bought at the office supply store a decade ago.
The little machine that sits next to the desk just waiting to jam.
Trying to process 7 years of financial history with a home shredder is like using safety scissors to mow your lawn. It is agonizingly slow, and it's ultimately ineffective.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you really have to look at the physical limitations and the underlying mechanisms of home office methods versus commercial industrial technology.
Right, let's look at the math first.
A single year of standard tax documents is roughly 50 to 100 pages.
Which doesn't sound too bad on its own.
No, but if you are cleaning out 7 years of financial history for a household, you are easily looking at filling 4 to 6 standard banker's boxes.
And the sources point out that each of those boxes weighs 30 to 40 pounds. You are dealing with over 150 pounds of dense paper.
Now, try feeding thousands of pages through a home shredder.
Good luck with that.
The mechanism in a consumer machine is incredibly basic. It is usually just a single row of simple blades. Because the motor is small, those machines tap out after 5 to 10 pages per pass.
Yeah, and worse, they overheat rapidly. They require a 20 to 30 minute cooldown period after just 5 or 10 minutes of continuous work.
You would spend entire weekends just waiting for your shredder motor to stop smoking.
Not exactly the relaxing spring weekend you had planned.
Definitely not.
But the time commitment isn't even the scariest part. It's the security flaw. Because of that single row of blades, most of those home machines are what the industry calls strip-cut shredders.
Right, they cut the paper into these long vertical ribbons, usually about 7/32 of an inch wide.
Which is a massive vulnerability. According to security research, criminals can and do successfully reconstruct those strips.
It is essentially just a jigsaw puzzle for identity thieves.
Exactly. They even have scanning software now where they can feed the strips through a scanner, and a computer program visually stitches the document back together. It completely defeats the purpose of shredding in the first place.
So how does an industrial machine actually fix that? What makes it so different?
Well, it comes down to the mechanism. Professional industrial machines use microcut and crosscut technology.
Okay, so not just straight lines.
Right. Instead of a single row of blades pulling paper straight down, an industrial shredder operates on a dual axis.
I see.
It is pulling the paper through massive, interlocking, rotating cylinders that chew the document vertically and horizontally at the exact same time.
So instead of long strips, it reduces the paper to tiny particles that are less than 1/16 of an inch in size. It looks like confetti.
It makes physical or digital reconstruction of the document absolutely impossible. You are turning a tax return into dust.
And the scale these facilities operate on is mind-blowing. An AA-certified shredding facility, like the ones Neighborhood Parcel uses, can process over 100,000 pounds of paper in a single day.
To put that in perspective, that is the equivalent of destroying the 10-year financial records of 500 different households, all in one single business day.
It is incredible efficiency.
And it's no wonder the global document shredding market is booming, reaching $3.15 billion in 2024. People are waking up to how vulnerable their paper trails really are.
We've established the threat, we've outlined the rules of what to keep, and we've explained the mechanical necessity of professional micro-cut shredding. Let's build a practical step-by-step action plan for you to tackle this.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the absolute best piece of advice in this entire stack of sources is this. Do not sort your papers by page type.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and do not waste your time removing staples or paper clips, because those industrial shredders use those massive interlocking steel cylinders. They are absolute beasts.
They just eat right through them.
They eat right through standard office fasteners, rubber bands, and mixed paper without even blinking. You don't have to meticulously prep the paper.
That alone saves hours of frustrating work. So here is your definitive 3-step action plan for this weekend.
Lay it on us.
Step 1. Inventory your records. Walk through your home, find every box and folder, and just note the year ranges.
Simple enough.
Step 2. Pull out the permanent documents, the birth certificates, the deeds, and get those into a fireproof safe or a safe deposit box. Keep them far away from the shred pile.
Definitely don't want to accidentally shred your birth certificate.
No, you do not. And step 3. Take everything that is definitively older than 7 years, throw it into a box or a bag, staples and all, and get it ready for transport.
The logistics of getting it destroyed are incredibly affordable. Let's look at Neighborhood Parcel's Tewksbury location as our prime example.
What are the rates like?
They offer a drop-off service that is just 99 cents per pound. There are no minimums, there are no binding contracts, and they operate 7 days a week.
That is really convenient.
If you have that typical household cleanout we mentioned, say 5 or 6 of those heavy banker's boxes, you are looking at roughly $150 to $240 total.
Think about that. That is cheaper than paying for a single hour of an accountant's time to help you sort through a mess of outdated records.
And for businesses or folks with even more volume, they offer off-site pickup where they come directly to you. They load it securely into a truck right in front of you.
If you are someone who really needs to see it to believe it, they also offer a witness shredding appointment.
Oh, how does that work?
For a minimum of $75, you can drop off your documents and literally watch them be fed into the industrial blades in real time. Talk about total peace of mind.
That is awesome. And for the small business owners listening, you receive a notarized certificate of destruction at the end of the process.
Which is absolutely critical. That certificate proves compliance with major federal regulations.
Like HIPAA, right.
Exactly. We are talking about HIPAA, which mandates the strict destruction of medical and patient records. We're talking about FACTA, the Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act, which requires the secure disposal of consumer credit information to prevent identity theft.
Right.
And SOX, or the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which dictates how corporate financial records must be handled to prevent fraud. Having a notarized certificate means if you ever get audited, you have legal proof that you handled the data correctly.
You aren't just taking their word for it. You have a legal shield.
This raises an important question, though. We are talking about destroying hundreds of thousands of pounds of paper daily across this industry. What happens to all of that confetti?
Yeah, if we are just turning mountains of paper into mountains of tiny paper particles and throwing it into a landfill, that's a massive environmental problem.
But it doesn't go to a landfill. That is the beautiful twist to this entire process. All of that destroyed paper is 100% recycled.
The mechanism of the recycling process is brilliant. Once the paper is microcut, those tiny particles are baled into massive, dense blocks.
And then what?
Those blocks are sent directly to paper mills. At the mill, the confetti is dumped into large vats of chemicals and water to break it down into a slurry, or pulp.
Oh, wow.
They screen out all those staples and paper clips we told you not to worry about. They de-ink the paper, and then they press that pulp into new, everyday paper products like paper towels or tissue paper.
The environmental impact of that cycle is substantial. The data shows that recycling just 1 ton of shredded paper saves between 17 and 31 trees.
That is amazing.
It saves 7,000 gallons of water and 4,000 kilowatt-hours of electricity. It even prevents 60 pounds of airborne pollutants from being expelled.
So by securely disposing of your sensitive data, you are taking that mountain of anxiety-inducing paperwork from your basement and turning it into a highly positive environmental impact.
Proper document destruction, as we've explored today, is a multi-layered shield. It protects your personal identity from low-tech criminals, it safeguards your business's proprietary information, and it actively benefits the environment.
By embracing the 7-year rule and utilizing professional microcut shredding, you aren't just regaining physical space in your home office, you are gaining ultimate peace of mind.
It really reframes how we think about privacy in general.
It does. We live in a highly digitized world. We are constantly worrying about our digital footprints, we change our passwords, we use two-factor authentication, we read about massive server hacks in the news.
But as this deep dive clearly shows, our physical paper footprint is often just as revealing.
And ironically, it's often much easier for a criminal to access simply by walking down your street on trash day. Next time you are staring down that mountain of paperwork during your spring cleaning, remember what's actually at stake.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our modern life, where data seems to live forever in the cloud, replicated across servers all over the globe, is the physical destruction of a microcut paper document the only time we can ever truly guarantee that a piece of information is gone forever.
Wow, that is the perfect thought to leave off on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, protect your privacy, and go conquer those filing cabinets.